And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. It's the John Phillips Show.
You're doing great.
I'm trying so hard.
You're breaking something that you've been doing for 20 years this year.
That's true. You should have seen it when I tried really hard to stop speeding. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
Antonio Villaraigosa is not a fan of Gavin Newsom's podcast.
I wouldn't have a conversation about transgender, and I don't disagree with the governor on what he said. I disagree on where he said it. Charles Kirk.
Charles?
Well, Antonio's 9,000 years old, so he refers to you by your Christian name.
And, of course, he's somebody with a fake name.
That's true. Both of them are fake, actually. The first and the last.
Tony Viller.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome to the program the managing editor at Red State, who you can read online at redstate.com and follow on X at Jen Van Laar. Jennifer Van Laar, welcome.
So good to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And you have a new bombshell piece about corruption at the L.A. County Department of Public Health that is so new and so fresh, I haven't even had time to read it yet. So can you fill us in on just exactly what you found going on at the L.A. County Department of Public Health under Barbara Ferrer?
Yeah, well, it's not extremely different in some ways from some stories we've already broken here, including the things that led to the suicide of Heather Hughes just over a year ago, who's a public health employee who jumped to her death from the Metroplex building in Koreatown. But what this is more retaliation, and it's because someone who actually worked in Ferrer's office overseeing contract expenditures from federal dollars that came from CDC related to COVID prevention in schools, she refused to sign a fraudulent invoice, and so she was terminated. Then they kept her paycheck from her for 2 months until she was almost homeless, basically forced her to sign a separation agreement or severance agreement. She still lost everything and was homeless, has to have her kids in a whole different county to be able to have them housed. It's on food stamps, and trying to get some kind of accountability out of the LA County Department of Public Health on this, because they're obviously not using funds for which they are supposed to be, for the reasons for which they're supposed to be used.
Okay, so let me just see if I'm following you correctly. There was an employee who worked not in some remote office on the outskirts of L.A. County. Someone worked for the L.A. County Department of Public Health under Barbara Ferrer. They were then asked to do something unethical, if not illegal. They refused, and once they refused, the fix was in for them, and they were punished and retaliated against, and the department played such hardball that the person essentially had serious financial problems.
Yep, that's exactly correct.
Boy, she sounds like a wonderful boss.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
And you would think that they want that money to keep coming from the CDC and all their other federal grants. I think that Ferrer said recently to the LA Times that more than 2/3 of their operating budget comes from federal dollars. You'd think that she would want to make sure they're in compliance with all of the record keeping, but nope. What happens there is if they are reconciling invoices and what's actually been paid out and there's a discrepancy, the contractors will just make up an invoice for whatever the discrepancy amount is and then expect the public health department person to sign it, which I guess everyone else did until this person, and then they go on their merry way.
So if they're falsifying documents and then having people who know it's not true sign off on it, to my eye, and I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds like fraud.
Right. And the problem is, I mean, why would the accounting be off? That could be revealing a bunch of other things that were not invoiced correctly, or maybe they were things that weren't supposed to be allowed under the contract. I know on this one, one thing that was mentioned was these recipients were buying gift cards for parents using the federal dollars, which is specifically prohibited on that contract. So when someone like her would go back and say, no, you can't invoice us for gift cards. Oh, okay, well, and then they would just change it.
So that it would be compliant with whatever the grant language in the grant said.
Right.
But in reality, the LA County Department of Public Health was just saying, okay, we have this grant money. There's certain parameters that surround the money, but we don't want to use it for that. We want to use it for something else. So we're going to spend it however we want to spend it. But on paper, it's going to say that we did what we were supposed to do.
Right. And this whistleblower came in at the very end of the fiscal year for this program, and so only had a couple of days to look at these invoices. And the one that she could tell was fraudulent. She said, no, I'm not signing. It was only for a penny. The contract was $6.8 million. And so one of the things that this whistleblower told her coworkers, like, look, if you have a contract this big, an invoice for a penny is going to raise red flags and fraud alerts. And so even if it was legitimate, you still don't want to do it that way. And she just got pushed back. And then unfortunately, her father passed away that same week, the whistleblower, and then she was out on bereavement leave. And while she was out on leave, they said, oh, we're terminating your contract, by the way, even though she would be protected if she's out on bereavement leave. And even though she's a contract, the same protections apply to contractors as they do to employees. Then they got her boss to go ahead and sign that fraudulent invoice. Then when she complained, they just kept stalling on giving her paycheck until she basically was almost starved out of it.
What would be the explanation for filing an invoice for a penny?
Just because everything else didn't add up and it was a penny off, so they wanted to make it all balanced without investigating why it's a penny off.
This is so strange.
Right?
And this was at a time, too, when, don't forget, COVID hit, no one had any supplies, no one had the materials that they needed, there were no bid contracts going all over the place. People were spending money without the traditional oversight. So you already had an environment where the normal rules weren't being followed, but they weren't being followed with the tacit permission of the people in charge. If you're doing stuff like this on top of everything that you were actually allowed to do because there was a pandemic going on, can you imagine how the money, the bulk of the money in that department must have been spent?
Exactly. And this woman had worked. So what they do within LA County Department of Public Health, they contract out with a couple of big either staffing firms or consulting firms because the government's notoriously slow at everything. So when they get money in, they immediately disperse it to these other companies so that then it can be administered without all of the checks and balance that government supposedly has. So this woman who's a whistleblower had worked with the staffing company for over a decade doing similar types of work. So she has stories and evidence of a lot of this mismanagement, and Ferrer knows that, which is why they're playing such hardball. They're not even, Ferrer's office isn't even replying to the California Civil Rights Division office that served her with a complaint on January 13th of this year. She has 30 days to reply, and she has not replied, and they're not even harassing her about it. I think they're just trying to, again, stonewall and make sure it goes away.
And probably intimidate her.
Right, because they know that she is homeless.
What kind of work environment did she describe in Barbara Ferrer's LA County Department of Public Health?
Well, everything that we had thought that it was, that she brought her bullies from Boston with her, that there was a patronage hires like Carl Kemp that we had talked about, that the bullying and retaliation is just beyond anything that she had ever seen in that office or in government, which, you know, we know that LA County doesn't have a great reputation for that anyway. So for it to be even worse than that, and that just a lot of them, in addition to just being bullies, were not competent at what they're doing, which is not surprising. And part of this contract, which we just have to laugh at, was part of what they were going to do was have PAL awards, these parent action leaders at 35 different school sites in LA County. These parents were getting $6,300 a semester to serve as a team leader to develop strategies for effectiveness. Who knows? Then more of them were getting $5,700 a semester to be parent influencers, to reach out to parents and provide peer education, probably on the benefits of masking and immunizations or vaccinations.
So she was paying off parents to try to turn them into her army.
Yeah. So that's like $12,000, $13,000 a year to 5 parents at each of 35 school sites. That's a nice little army there.
And then you think about what these people must have been doing. They were probably some of the ones posting on Nextdoor, getting involved in these parent groups on Facebook, active on social media, that sort of thing.
Right. And then being the bullies, you're against masking? Why? Or, that kind of thing. And now we know that it was the CDC dollars paying for this organized harassment.
And if the federal government, especially right now when Donald Trump is in charge, if they were aware that this department is using their grant money that's supposed to go to other things for expenditures like this, he's going to be really angry and he's going to want to cut them off.
Yeah, and he might want to do a whole bunch of investigations. I bet there's a lot of things that the statute of limitations has not run on yet.
Did this whistleblower have much direct contact with Barbara Ferrer herself?
Yes, and even CC'd Ferrer on some of the emails saying, well, I cannot sign this invoice for a penny because it's obviously fraudulent and not correct, and that's illegal and against the terms of our contract.
And what did Barbara Ferrer say?
No reply.
So she just ghosted her and had her minions do her dirty work.
Exactly. Trying some plausible deniability.
What did she say that Ferrer was like in the office to deal with on a personal level?
A complete mean girl. Like, we could tell that even though she tried to feign empathy at the different press conferences over the COVID time. But you could tell that mean girl was just underneath. And that's exactly what she was like, and very retaliatory.
I'll tell you, people look at her as being a buffoon, and in many ways she is. I mean, she has no background at all in medicine. She has no background at all in infectious disease. But she does have a background in woke politics. And politically, she's not dumb. Politically, she knows who butters her bread. And she knows that as long as she has 3 votes on the LA County Board of Supervisors, she can remain in power and effectively do whatever she wants. So she constantly makes sure that board, at least 3 votes on that board, is very happy with what she's doing. And she does whatever she has to do to stay on their good side. And it doesn't matter how much embarrassment she brings to the county. It doesn't matter how much negative attention she brings to Los Angeles. As long as those 3 votes are with her, she's not going anywhere. That is literally her constituency. She's not there to please the people of Los Angeles. She's not there to please the people who are being serviced by her department or her employees. She has an audience of 3, and that is Holly Mitchell, Lindsay Horvath, and Hilda Solis.
Yep, that's exactly right. And this whistleblower said they, seen people come and go over 15 years in the department, and they cannot understand why Ferrer was still in place with all of the ways that she has messed up. And obviously that she has some very powerful political friends, because there's no other reason that she should be in her job.
No. And we know based on your previous reporting that the people, and not the people at the top, not the political people, not the people that Ferrer brought from Boston, but the people who make sure that the beaches are clean, the restaurants are not dirty, those people, they all hate her and they can't stand her. And it sounds to me like this story confirms what we had learned before in that regard.
Absolutely. And this whistleblower said they were pretty much ready to give up the way that Heather Hughes did whenever Heather killed herself, and then saw, my reporting and heard a lot on your show about it, and then eventually from other outlets, and that gave a lot of them hope that there could actually be an end to this bullying at some point.
Well, and it should be said that the stories that you have broken about Ferrer, the stories that the LA Times hasn't broken, or many of the mainstream outlets in Los Angeles haven't broken, but the stories that have been broken have come from sources in that office, people who feel like they have no other place to go to, people who were educated on how to keep the beaches clean or the restaurants clean or whatever, were being asked to do things that were outside their education, outside their work history, their knowledge base, and that this draconian leader was treating them like crap and was asking them to work long hours in fields that they knew nothing about. And during COVID, she wanted them to be her political army, and she just drove these people mad.
Right, and asking them to do things that were also illegal or things that were ethically shady, and there's no recourse. And then when you go to the California Civil Rights Department and the EEOC, and the county gets away with this kind of stonewalling, and they're not held to the same rules everyone else is, it's easy to get kind of despondent about it.
Is your piece live right now?
It is not, but it will be within the next hour.
Okay. Within the next hour, you all need to go to redstate.com and read this bombshell report that Jennifer Van Laar just wrote, or is in the process of writing, I guess I should say, that'll go live within the next hour. It'll also be tweeted out at Jen Van Laar. So go to X and follow Jennifer there. So that way, when it goes live, if you don't see it on the website, she'll tweet it out. You can click on the link and you can read the article. I can't wait until 3 o'clock so I can read it myself. Jennifer Van Laar, excellent reporting as always. And thank you so much for stopping by this afternoon.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
Let's say that you want to hear all the podcasts that we did going after Barbara Ferrer in 2020 or 2021.
Next slide.
Or 2022.
No, thank you.
Or 2023. Or 2024. Or 2025.
I have a hard time understanding.
Search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. It is very easy for anybody to do, except Barbara Ferrer.
I have tech issues.
And just think, Randy, starting on April 1st, listeners in the Bay Area are going to become familiar with Barbara Ferrer themselves.
It's going to be like, that comforting feeling that people got when they used to watch Married with Children on Fox 11. It was, my life isn't as bad as Al Bundy's. When you're in the San Francisco Bay Area and you think your policies are crazy and you realize that LA County has somebody who's even crazier than the dumbest thing that San Francisco has ever done, it's going to make you feel real good for not living in Los Angeles.
No, thank you.
Because usually what happens is San Francisco comes out with a dumb idea, they course correct. Los Angeles sees what San Francisco did and doubles down on stupid.
I wonder what they're going to think of her.
The evidence is like crystal clear on that.
All right. So in California, one of the taxes that you pay whenever you fill your car up with gas is the gas tax. The gas tax is not only a state tax, it's a federal tax. So you're getting dinged by Washington and Sacramento.
Of course, the Washington tax is about 25 cents. The state tax that goes up every single year because of inflation, even though it's also inflationary, is up to 60 cents a gallon.
Well, at least we get all the great services. But now they're thinking about replacing the gas tax with a per mile tax.
Yes, because the gas tax, even though it goes up every year, the revenues go down every year because more and more people have hybrids or plug-in hybrids or electric cars. The cars they keep encouraging everyone to buy that don't use gasoline, which means no gas tax. So now they're coming up with a new way to screw every driver in California over: pay per mile.
So they call this the Screw Randy Wang tax.
Yes. They are very upset at me for owning an electric car and driving it 34 miles a day.
I'm sure you feel like this would be equity and you would be happy to kick in, correct?
So the state encourages you to do something for over a decade. The state says this is going to save the planet. The state says this is so good for the environment. You're helping out everybody. And then you do it, and the state says, wait, now we're not making any money off of you.
You know the saying, Randy, no good deed goes unpunished.
You know, while we're at it, why don't we just start taxing non-smokers?
Your lungs are too damn clean. Pay this tax.
For more on the proposed pay-per-mile bill, here's ABC 10 in Sacramento.
Right now, Californians pay the nation's highest state gas tax, currently sitting at about 60 cents per gallon,
and it'll go up again in July.
Cha-ching.
Per gallon, but an alternative could be on the horizon with more electric vehicles hitting the roads. The state is studying whether to switch to charging all drivers per mile. ABC10's Becca Habegger joins us now. Becca, we understand Caltrans is calling this the California road charge, right?
Yeah, Alex, you and I...
If you want to drive California's dilapidated roads, you're going to pay for it.
How do they expect people to buy electric vehicles or other cars? Because I'm sure technology will produce something else in the future that they're going to encourage us to buy. If part of the sweetener is you don't have to pay an existing tax, and then when enough people do it and the revenue dips, they find a way to ding you even if you do what they want you to do.
Well, and this goes to show you, what are their actual priorities? If they believe that the EVs are the way to save the planet and solve the climate crisis, then why are they punishing EV drivers? It's just like what happened with solar, where this state encouraged rooftop solar, had very, very, very generous incentives until PG&E and SoCal Edison said, we're not making any money off of those people. So the CPUC screwed over anyone that wants to buy solar if you live in those jurisdictions.
Well, just go back to the early days of electric cars. Remember when they would let you drive in the diamond lane even if there was only one person in there?
Oh, those were the days.
Road charge, right?
Yeah, Alex, you and I, we had a lot of questions this morning when we discussed this in our editorial meeting, like how would the state know how much each person drives? Well, Caltrans is still studying that and more, but we can get a sense of what they're considering.
Oh, you know what they're going to do. They're going to put a little transponder in every single car, and they're going to track your whereabouts.
Okay, let's just assume that you have some poor guy who doesn't have a job, and they finally get a job, and they need to get to that job, but they have no money, which is why they got the job in the first place, but they can't afford to drive on the freeway to get to the job. How are you supposed to make that work?
We have somehow found an even more regressive tax than the gas tax itself, because the gas tax punished anyone that was driving a gas-powered car. But now you're going to specifically be punishing further people who live in, let's say, Lancaster or Riverside that work in Los Angeles but cannot afford to live in Los Angeles or Lancaster. You're going to charge them, if you're paying, even if it's 1 cent per mile, whatever it is, if they're driving 100+ miles a day, that's going to add up.
Yeah, because let's just think about this logically. What you're effectively doing is you're turning every road into a toll road.
If you put gas in your vehicle, then you know that all too painful price at the pump. It's one reason why some people are switching to gasless electric vehicles or zero-emission vehicles.
You know what else is great? People don't harass you at the gas station because you're never at the gas station.
Oh, that's always pleasant.
But as more drivers make the switch, states across the country face a drop in gas tax revenue, says Michael Manville, professor and chair of the Department of Urban Planning at UCLA.
The purchasing power of the fuel tax, which is the main way that we finance transportation infrastructure, has been steadily declining.
Caltrans.
It really puts government in a tough spot. Do you care about what you say your cause is, or do you care about the money?
Well, ultimately, all of those people are in elected office in Sacramento to service the public employee unions. That's who really butters their bread. And those are the people they have to take care of. And the environmental stuff, yeah, that's a fun thing to do when you go to wine and brie parties on the west side, because those people all care about the dolphins. But ultimately, you don't really work for them. You work for the unions because they're the power players in Sacramento.
You work for this lady.
Get that money!
You got that right.
Caltrans says right now about 80% of California's highway and road repairs are funded by the gas tax. But analysts say that.
Then why are the roads so garbage?
Yeah, the roads are horrible here.
But analysts say that revenue could drop by some $5 billion in a decade if the state meets its climate goals.
If you drive on the 101 freeway in between Ventura and Santa Barbara, where the 101 widening project has been going on for pretty much my entire life, you'll see all of these signs that say this is provided to you by SB1. The only thing SB1 does, it pays for signs that say SB1 is fixing this road.
I can beat you. For my entire life, LAX has been under construction, and it's always looked like a FEMA camp.
Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order in 2020 requiring all new passenger vehicles sold in California to be zero emission by 2035.
We have a lot more electric cars, we have a lot more hybrid cars, and just the typical new car just gets better gas mileage.
So the state encouraged everyone to buy these cars, and now the state's broke.
Well, the state regulated this tax out of existence, effectively.
Now the state is considering something called the California Road Charge, as Caltrans explains in a video.
If you drive a new electric sedan or an old but faithful minivan, you pay for the number of miles you drive.
Who produced this video, and how much did it cost?
Here's what we'll do to convince them this is a good thing. We'll make it sound like Sesame Street.
If you drive a new electric sedan or an old but faithful minivan,
Hey, that rhymes!
you pay for the number of miles you drive. California is studying road charge as a...
What does it say when the videos that the state of California produces to explain policies sound like they're being told to preschoolers?
Because they think we're that dumb. And if you look at our election results, we are.
California is studying road charge as a tool that might replace the gas tax. Because as we move toward a zero-emission future, the gas tax won't last forever.
Caltrans.
And we got to get that money somehow. More money, more money, more money.
Get that money.
Get that money!
Caltrans conducted a California road charge pilot last year and is currently studying the results. It tracked how much people drove each month through 3 reporting methods: plug-in devices, vehicle telematics, and photographed odometers. It charged 2.5 cents per...
So either way, now the state of California is getting even more surveillance on every single car in the state.
Oh, sure. Big Brother is here, and he's broke.
It charged 2.5 cents per mile for passenger vehicles. But some say a per-mile road charge is not fair. Writing to Governor...
2.5 cents a mile. So let's say that that's what the charge is, and I guarantee it would be way higher than that. If you're driving 100 miles each way to work, which some people do that, well, now you're paying a $5 toll each way every single day.
Think about this for a second. If you were from a different planet and you came to California and you heard about the Democratic Party, which is supposed to be the party of the working man, being in control of everything, could you design a tax system that punishes poor people more than the one that we have?
But some say a per-mile road charge is not fair. Writing to Governor Gavin Newsom in 2021, then Senate Republican leader Scott Wilkes said, in part, as long as we fail to build housing in adequate supplies to house our workforce near their jobs, then...
I don't want to move to Culver City!
Neither do I.
Then the working poor are still going to be paying far more in vehicle miles traveled fees than their wealthy counterparts. This is fundamentally unfair and targets those who can least afford to pay the fee.
It is a very regressive tax. The poorest among us pay the most.
Okay, so they're taxing people who have to commute long distances. They're taxing people for cigarettes. If you're going after the poor, what's next? Large taxes on Star Trek Signature Series plates and Elvis collectible mugs?
The bill passed and Newsom signed it. But whether a road charge system ultimately replaces California's gas tax is still in question and would be years away.
No, they'd have both. The state is not going to willingly eliminate a tax. They do not do that. Even when the state says, I have a temporary tax for you, like in the Jerry Brown days, it becomes permanent.
Yeah. They are addicted to that money, and they are not going to give it up.
I could be wrong, but I'm not sure this is coming down the pike anytime soon.
Caltrans plans on releasing a final report from the pilot program later this year.
All right, as we learned through our research today, other states are also trying this road charge as well, too. It's not just California.
Yeah, that's right.
What other stupid states are doing this crap?
Well, here's what they're going to do. It's going to be a tax increase, but they're going to say it's not a tax increase. They're going to say it's just modernizing the tax system.
Yeah, that's right. In Utah, for example, drivers of electric vehicles can either pay a flat annual fee of about $140 or opt into the Utah Road Usage Charge Program instead.
Utah, I thought better of you.
Well, for $140, if you got out of paying a gasoline tax, I'd take that deal.
Paying 1.11 cents per mile, but no more than the cost of that flat annual fee. So if you drive
$140 a year, do you know how much near beer that can buy?
Well, in Utah, they have weather, they have lots of snow, they have hail, they have more rain than we do. Half of that state's in the mountains, difficult to get to, and their roads are infinitely better than ours.
If you drive less, you pay less. And in Utah, they offer 2 mileage reporting options, one with telematics, the vehicle.
Okay, you know that you try to encourage certain behavior by how you set up your tax system. We don't like alcohol, so we tax alcohol. We don't like cigarettes, so we tax cigarettes. We want you to buy a home, so there's a home mortgage deduction. We want you to have kids, so there's child tax credits. If you look at this and you say, okay, what's the motivation here? They want us all to be shut-ins?
Pretty much.
They don't want us to leave our home. They don't want us to drive to the mall. They don't want us to drive to dinner. They don't want us to drive to a job. They don't want us to go on vacation via car. They don't want us to do any of that because they're punishing us for that.
Well, and then on the other side, when no one's driving, they're like, wait, no one's going to downtown. We got to do something about that.
You know what this is going to do? This is going to make Jeff Bezos even richer.
Pretty much everything does.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Okay, I got 2 we got to read here. Let's start with Nicholas, who writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. When I was living in North Hollywood, I had a construction site in Riverside. I had to go 62 miles each way every day. Most construction workers have to do a lot of driving. You think real estate is expensive now? Keep making it more expensive to drive. No one will want to work in California. Also, the freeway sucked. I've never gone through tires so fast anywhere else in the country. And then Will writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. You'll like this one, Johnny. If the Exorcist Barbara Ferrer had to pay a mileage tax based on the obvious mileage on her broom and faced she could find a balanced national budget 2 years ago, then she could justify her ridiculous salary.
He's referencing that hit I did on Fox 11 when I was all worked up.
Yeah.
Well, there have been several occasions where you have referred to Barbara Ferrer and a broom.
I never called her a witch, though. I just said she needs to get on her broom and get out of town.
Next slide.
But if you believe the comments on the internet, I called her a witch, which I very much did not do.